what you believe our simulation is like. So in your visual representation of the simulacrum, is the Earth round, or is it flat, or is it something else?
Well, I have addressed this many times on my own channel. It's first of all, as a mathematical construct by which we're jacked into through the central nervous system, we perceive the world through the five senses. Everything we measure from inside the construct is therefore subjective. There's no true objectivity here. We are directly affected by the very environment we're trying to measure. Flat earthers are always going to produce scientific experimentation that shows to them that the world is flat. They're going to show lasers that go over 25 miles of surface of water, 3 feet high on one coast and 3 feet high at a receptacle mirror on the other coast, and they're going to prove that that area of 25 miles of water is flat. They're going to show mathematical demonstrations, optical demonstrations. They're going to show things that are outside the visual range, and they're going to blow them up with cameras and magnify them to the point where you can see the base of buildings 30 miles away. Now, every bit of this proves to someone who is searching for flat Earth evidence that the world is flat. In a simulated context, the simulacrum itself will always produce the phenomena that is searched for. It doesn't matter how you search for it. If a conclusion is already made, it will build a construct to support that conclusion. Same thing applies for space. Astronomers are always assuming that some of their spectrographic colors, the things that they detect, mean that certain elements are present in certain luminaries and planetary bodies. So they come up with these great graphs and grand theories that Jupiter is made up of these materials. It has this type of atmosphere. This is basically what it looks, but every single picture we see of Jupiter is an artist rendition, and they admit this. NASA pictures show this is basically a composite of images all put together by an artist to best represent all our telemetry and all the pictures that we've taken. Now, everything in the sky is simulated. You're looking up at a multi-tiered holographic programming template that is basically designed to mimic parallax. It mimics every single thing that a researcher thinks he's going to find when he cogitates about what this cosmos is about. He's going to believe that those luminaries are hundreds of billions of miles away. They're light years away. The sky itself will produce whatever phenomena is necessary to comport with what your belief system is while you're researching it. So when you live in a simulated context that is absolutely reactive to the human psyche, but the human psyche is completely subject to the filters of the central nervous system, then you will always find what you're looking for, and it will convince you. This is the problem we have, because the arithmetic shows we're living on a flat plane. We're not living on a globe. But when you study the sky produces all the deceptive phenomena to make you believe optically that the arc of the stellosphere, the phases of the moon, the fact that the moon does not show but one face to the entire surface of the world, shows that, okay, we must be on a globe. The moon must be just gently rolling around. And if we necessarily infer that these are true, then everything in space must be globes and planets and all that too. But it's a lie. There is absolute deceit in the sky. It's not just as simple as the sky producing phenomena and we're interpreting it as a heliocentric system. It's actually designed to deceive us into basically inducing us to believe that it is a heliocentric system. But the things don't make sense. I've revealed on my own channel the discoveries in the 1890s and 1910s of astronomers who took photographs of the sky. They wanted to find parallax because they couldn't. That is absolutely important. Parallax is when the stars shift according to perspective. So they took photos, they triangulated from 3 different points on Earth in the 1890s when they photographed the heavens. They waited 6 months, because if we're in a heliocentric system, that means the world is now repositioned 186 million miles away on the other side of Sol, on the other side of the sun, 6 months away. They took the same pictures from the same locations, the same parts of the heavens. When they developed the photographic plates, They were astonished. Zero evidence of parallax. And this was widely reported back then. Charles Fort wrote a lot about this. It's impossible unless the sky and the luminaries are absolutely fixed and we are unmoving. But this is what you would find in a simulation. We're not really hurling around a star, but the simulacrum's stellosphere is going to mimic the movements of that to make you believe that we are. So when this is why I can't even engage in is the world a globe or is the world or is it a flat earth? I can't engage in these arguments. I frustrate my flat earth brothers. I got much respect for them because they're out of the box thinkers and they realize that the official narratives are bullshit. But at the same time, I can't say, hey man, look, I'm a flat earther. I can't. Because that puts attachments to my belief system that don't belong. I don't believe we're under a dome. I don't believe that the world is as small as that cosmology that flat Earth dictates. I believe there are multiple simulacrums, and these simulacrums have multiple worlds, and that we pass through these. And there are men and materials that are removed from one simulacrum that's collapsing and no longer operating optimally and put into another one. And this is why we have so many strange introductions throughout the historical record, things that don't make sense. The sudden appearance of civilizations for which they never priorly existed. The sudden appearance of all new life forms that never existed. The sudden appearance of insect forms in 1867, 1868 that had never been known before, all of a sudden just flooding the United Kingdom. We have introductions of men and materials into our historical framework that don't make sense in a Newtonian heliocentric model, but they make perfect sense if this was a Hunger Games type holographic dome scenario where overseers outside the construct were able to program in and out phenomena, men, and materials.
Wow. That was probably the most comprehensive, intricate, and amazing response or answer that I've ever heard in regard to the flat earth argument. Thank you for that. And thank you for rehashing it, because I know being asked over and over again and talking about it on the channel.
That's okay. Like I said, this is my last podcast for a while. So, hey, if you got to ask it, go ahead and get it out.
Well, no, I appreciate your enthusiasm and your vigor to always answer the questions in a fresh way, because, it sounds like you're answering it for the first time. And I do appreciate that. I'm sure my viewers do. But you said a lot of things in there. From what I gather of what you said, it's not so easy as black and white. It's not like the world is flat. It's not. I'm sorry, go ahead if you were going to say something.
No, I'm just agreeing with you. This is not a simple thing. When you're dealing with interpreting phenomena from a subjective position, there can never be congruency between opposites. If we have opposite opinions, we'll never align, because our central nervous systems are filtering out phenomena for which you've accepted that I have not. Central nervous system is a filter. It's not what science tells you it is. It allows you to see only 5.5 of the electromagnetic spectrum. The other 94.5% is still there. It exists. It's all around you, but you can't see it. You can't hear the whole auditory range. Olfactory senses are severely limited. So the central nervous system is a filter, and being a filter, it filters out all the phenomena that would prove to you the very things that you believe are untrue. So, it's very sophisticated. What we're dealing with is a type of technology that is far beyond anything that we have developed or that we can develop from inside a simulacrum, because the simulacrum is self-aware. It is a mathematical construct, and it will not allow a technology to be invented within it that will affect it. This is what happened before, and it's learned its lesson. But what I'm describing now is the introduction of AIX, which does not belong here. Artificial Intelligence X is the introduction by which the simulacrum would never allow that to happen again.
I see. I have like a million questions here, but I just want to say that I did make a video in the past talking about how flat Earth could be possible within a simulation, because if this is a simulation, it could just produce a flat Earth that makes it appear as if it's a round Earth. But I know a lot of people are very passionate when it comes to flat Earth, round Earth, because, so that I don't try to go there too much. But I myself have been trying to rectify this whole thing. And so your explanation helped me. So thank you. What about aliens? How do they figure into this? Or do you believe in the existence of them? And if so, where do they come from?
Another topic that I've gone a lot on my channel, but these are older videos. These are none of my newer videos talk about this. So it's probably been well over a year since I've even talked about extraterrestrials and UFOs and all that. But we are led to believe through multimedia, through almost all information sources, we are basically induced to look up. But I have revealed in my videos and shown the evidence that the entire extraterrestrial alien presence in our world isn't from the sky. Over 90% of all UFO sightings are vehicles coming in and out of bodies of water. Submarine captains, merchant marine captains, everything that has been recorded in the sea, ship's logs going back to World War I, all these things have been noticed. Gigantic super constructions that are well lit, that are passing below ships in the Pacific that will blow your mind. These things have been recorded and they've been widely kept from the public, but you can gain access to these. Jacques Vallée, was it Ivar Zapp? There are many people who have documented these things from the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. And there is a race, and this is the subject of my first 15 or 20 videos. There is another race. They are not human. There is another race that occupies our world. And they were imprisoned inside the simulacrum before we were developed, before we became basically occupying the surface. They found refuge in the underworld. They have metropolises, they have cities, and there are many. We know of their existence. Don't think that the elite don't know that they're down there. They've probably been working together for a very long time, but they stay down there. Only times they come up is it's always with the deception that it's UFO alien technology. It's like 1947 was an alien assist, but it's not aliens. It's this other race from the underworld that has always had technology. They are the reasons why the folklore and the myths and the legends, these weird things happen. Fairy rings and all these things that for want of frames of reference, they're always relegated to very primitive tales and traditions. But if you shift your frames of reference to technology, it all makes sense. The whole history of the world, all the myths, legends, everything makes sense once you realize that there has always been a technologically advanced race in this world. They just hide, and the only place to hide is the underworld. But 100% of their propaganda toward us is inducing us to look up. They want us to believe that they're coming from the skies.
If you know about the flat Earth argument says that there's a ice wall that surrounds the entire continents and the oceans, right?
Right.
But someone like Admiral Byrd said beyond the ice wall, if you continue past it, there are resources and there's a lot of land, like landmass bigger than the United States. Could, in fact, aliens be coming from there? If the whole flat Earth argument.
Anything is possible. We're living in a simulated context. If our world is but one biosphere in a whole network of places that are all walled in by ice, it very well could be. I don't have any data for that. I haven't even researched Admiral Beard. I have watched a couple video presentations, but I will never cite a video as source material. As far as his own writings and stuff, I just haven't really got into it. I don't doubt that there could be other continents that we have not been told about. I find many anomalies with Australia. Australia is a very unique. Even its flora and fauna is unlike anything else in the rest of the world. It's so strange. The whole marsupial species, the whole genera is just so weird. In a whole world full of placentals, we have this continent full of marsupials. It's very unusual. A few marsupials in Tanzania and Africa, Madagascar, but it's that region of the world. But then the only other marsupial that exists outside that area is the opossum. The opossum is found all over the world. However, not one single opossum has ever been found in the fossil record. This is not the way it's supposed to be. It's just like hummingbirds. Hummingbirds, there's over 250 species of hummingbirds. Not one has ever been found outside the Americas. How come the rest of the world doesn't have any hummingbirds? We have a lot of flora and fauna mysteries like cactus. You don't find cactus in any deserts, but in the Americas. You don't find them in the other Chinese Taklamakan desert doesn't have any cactus. The Gobi Desert, the empty quarter of Arabia has no cactus. Cactuses are only found in the Americas. The Americas have the opossums. Europe does not. We have many anomalies about our different continents, almost as if continents are changing position. Now, they stay in the juxtaposition with each other, but it's like the landmass itself that we call the world shifts, exposing new continents from we don't know where it came from, but older continents like Lemuria that we claim went under the Pacific actually went somewhere else. So I'm on board with the fact that there's like a giant rotisserie happening. The disk of the world is shifting, and maybe those continents go straight under the ice wall, and maybe new continents from under the ice wall, like Australia, which looks like 5,000 years ago, was scraped under a heavy weight and just shoved here with all these weird new life forms. Yes, I'm on board with that. The problem is we're speculating now. I don't have any direct evidence. I just have I can just all day long I can enumerate all these weird anomalies about different, like the fact that cactus have never been found in the fossil record, but cactus are everywhere. There are many species of things that have been found in the fossil record, but they exist today absolutely unchanged. Many species of insects, many species of plants and mammals have been found fossilized, but that's not possible if the uniformitarian model is correct and that fossils were all created from an event, an extinction level event that occurred 65 million years ago. So I'm saying all that to say that we really don't know shit about the past. And the more we listen to the authorities, the more false trails we're going to follow. So we have to isolate all the anomalies and then build pictures from that. That's the only way we can find out the truth.
What made you realize that we're living in a simulation, and when did you first realize that? And are there any, clear-cut signs that we could see in the world that would point out that we're living in a simulation?
For me, my aha moment was basically when I knew something was wrong. When I was initially doing my research for coming from the world of the fundamentalist Southern Baptist, and I'm doing all my chronographical research in prison, I had always assumed that the absolute perfect mathematical patterns that I was discovering through all kinds of different series of historical events was just God. Well, this has to be God. The reason that this event happened exactly 414 years after this event, and this event was 270 years later, which is half of 414, and then this event here was 138 years after that, which is 1/3 of 414, and this event right here is 552 years later, which is 138 times 4, and now I would find all these, and then I would reduce them to pi and phi with my calculator, because I was always studying history mathematically, and I wanted to know, okay, well, if the Romans suffered this great drought right here, what was going on throughout the Mediterranean? So I would find out these other countries, I would divide it by 1.618, and I would find out that, wow, this is the exact same conditions, but now it's in a geographical area. Now it's China going through a drought, but it was connected by phi, which is basically the golden mean. I would find these patterns in pi, phi, curvature equations, and I realized, wait a minute, this is a whole series of histories that are holographically, well, I didn't say holographically back then, but whole mathematical templates for just overlaid civilizations. And civilizations then fulfill the templates. And you can follow these reality tunnels mathematically. And it shocked me. But when I was writing Chronicon and putting all this together, I didn't really I never assumed simulation theory was a thing. I never even came up on my radar. I conducted and finished my Chronicon, 510 pages. I finished the Chronicon, mapping out the history of the world and the mathematical patterns that I had found. And then I get out of prison. 2016, I'm released from prison. By mid-2017, simulation theory is popping up on my radar, and I immediately dismiss it. I'm still subject to my programming. So I'm watching a simulation theory video about 4 years ago. And as I'm watching that video, I'm like, wait a minute. If simulation theory is a thing, then it would absolutely make sense of all my mathematical data. But again, so our programming is so powerful that even when we're given direct evidence of the truth, we dismiss it. And it's exactly what happened to me. But it planted a seed. I'm thinking about simulation. It wasn't until I had a bad motorcycle accident and I was walking around feeling like I was like the best thing in the world. I had the greatest feeling in the world talking to people. I didn't realize my clothes had been ripped off of me. I had a crowd of people trying to take care of me. I got blood all over my body. I got rebar sticking out of my arm. My motorcycle's totaled. I'm walking around in a daze. I've done 2 videos about this experience, but I'm walking around just absolutely enjoying the fact that so many people were interested in how I was doing. And I understand that I was in shock, but at the same time, the euphoria that I was feeling as I was just engaging with other people, I was just talking to them. And I had people rapping my head and all kinds of things, but this detachment from my avatar was so beautiful. It was so surreal. And at the time, I wasn't thinking about my research. I wasn't thinking about anything. It was after I got out of ICU, after I got out of surgery, and I went home, that it all came into perspective. When I was in pain, I didn't feel any pain till about 2 days. Then I was in pain for almost a month, and I was bedridden. I couldn't even move because all my internal organs had sloshed. I hit a concrete pylon upside down at high velocity, and because my impact was my full body, it distributed the impact through my whole body. I hit flat on the upside down. But what it had done, it had basically loosened all my internal organs. They sloshed inside of me. And it took over 40 something days for my internal organs to heal. I could barely breathe. I couldn't eat anything. I felt like every organ in my body had been bruised. So it was during this period of just being dormant that my mind was in overdrive. Because I'm remembering the feeling I had when my body wasn't an issue anymore, and how clear I was thinking. And I had even called my sister. I mentioned in the video that I was wearing cargo pants. I reached into my lower pocket, pulled my phone out, called my sister, and right there, with no shirt on, blood all over my body, lacerations and scrapes, bruising already spreading under my skin. I sit there and call my sister, hey, I've been in an accident. I don't know how hurt I am, but I'm on 1488 over here by highway, I can't remember, 147 or something, out of Magnolia. So anyway, I told her my exact location at the time, and so she knew where to be. She knew exactly what hospital they're going to take me to by that location, and came and found me. So, it was just during that time period that I started reassessing everything, because I had only released one single YouTube video before this happened. Right before my motorcycle accident, I released one YouTube video. It was my very first video, and I explained in my video that I'm going to be doing a channel that's talking about the Phoenix phenomenon. What has happened to our world has been documented for 58 centuries, every 138 years. Sometimes it's bad, sometimes it passes over, but it's seen. Other times it is worldwide or hemispheric. So this is my first video. Then I had the motorcycle accident. My second video is all about simulation theory, and that I made an announcement in my second video that my whole channel's direction just changed. I'm still going to be talking about the Phoenix and all that because it's a big part of our reality. But I now made promises in my second video that I was going to wrap all my data around this new concept because it answers everything. My motorcycle accident made me realize that simulation theory answers every single enigma and anomaly from the ancient modern world. There are no exclusions. It answers all.
So did you start studying about simulation theory and looking into it a lot further after that point?
Well, when it comes to here again, we enter the realm of subjectivity. I have to bring new things to the table. I did notice that no one on YouTube was releasing simulation theory videos from the perspective of showing that we live in a simulated context by using ancient history. So that's basically what I started doing. And the only way to do that is to show the mathematical construct as it's operating. And this is what I did in my video, show the arithmetic. Look how these events all link together. So in looking at other people's simulation theory videos, I hit a wall. And that wall was subjectivity. Meaning, when I listen to Neil deGrasse Tyson, I'm listening to a very sanitized version of simulation theory from the context of a man who has accepted the Newtonian universe, who has accepted the heliocentric model, who has accepted the scientific establishment's version of history. And when I listen to his version of simulation theory, none of it really makes sense to me. It sounds like somebody who's just trying to sound smart, or somebody. I didn't like Neil deGrasse Tyson's descriptions of simulation theory. They really don't make sense. He creates more problems than he solves. So I left Neil deGrasse Tyson alone, and I listened to I don't even like him, but just to hear what he had to say, I listened to Bill Nye the Science Guy, who isn't even a scientist. But I listened to him, and his presentation was a little bit better. So I find these other guys on TED Talks. I listened to several TED Talk videos where people were discussing hologram theory, holographic reality, all that. So they're okay, but the problem is everybody today on YouTube talking about simulation theory are using modern frames of reference, technology, computers, and that's not their fault because that's the world we live in. So the only difference that I bring to the table is the fact that I mathematically analyzed the history of the world. After I was a chronologist, after I had already put together a huge chronicon showing what year it was in 41 different calendars in all these different civilizations. Actually, I analyzed over 200 different timekeeping systems, but 41 major calendars. I show the exact dates for each event in the history of the world as relative to that calendar in my chronicon. So, what I brought to the table was the mathematical structuring, showing, look, this is what's happening. These things are patterned. These events have predictive value. So I pretty much avoided the whole showing simulation theory through the computer vernacular, which is very popular, the techno vernacular, from our modern technological frames of reference. I've avoided that, because that too is subjective. We don't know just how sophisticated this is. We haven't developed anything that's as sophisticated as the world we're inside now, which is not natural, it's technology.
Which brings me to my next two questions, which I think my viewers will find very interesting. And of course, everything you say is very interesting. A lot of this information is brand new to people. In your perception of this simulacrum, how old is it? Because we're told it's something like, 13.7 billion years. What is your perspective on it? Because I know the flat earthers don't believe the earth is as old as it is. And I'm not calling you a flat earther, but what is your perspective on the age of the universe and the earth?
Okay. That's a big one there. That's a big one. This reality that we're told is billions of years old isn't near that age by a long shot. The reason they come to those conclusions is because they have accepted false premise after false premise after false premise. To be in the scientific community today, you have to be a uniformitarian. You have to be a uniformitarian. To understand uniformitarian principles means that these geologic ages that are hundreds of millions of years long all happen. What the problem is that in order to accept that, we have to act like a central nervous system. We have to edit out and ignore a tremendous amount of data in order to accept that premise. one of those pieces of data is the fact that it has been conclusively shown that there are radio halos around polonium signatures in granite today. They have been published widely, and the scientific community doesn't really want to discuss this. They try to come up with alternative theories how it's possible, but the problem is a half-life for a halo is like a tenth of a second. These are radioactive halos of burst of energy after polonium is basically appears. As soon as a polonium molecule or atom appears, it sends out a halo, a radio halo. Those radio halos have been fossilized in granite. It's impossible. They're supposed to flow through it. Well, many creationist scientists say that this is absolute evidence that granite was created in an instant. It could not have been developed from other molten materials. When you melt granite, it does not become another granite. When you melt granite, it becomes rhyolite. Rhyolite would in turn become other materials. So the basalts and rhyolites of the world are due to intense heat, igneous rock, metamorphic rock. All these things are effects. They're not causes. Granite is different. The very presence of radio halos in the polonium signatures shows that it was instantly created. There's no way for it to have been developed. That's just a data point, though. A data point that has been widely ignored. They don't want to deal with it. Other data points aren't so easily ignored, so they're censored. Very different. This is what the Smithsonian and other organizations have done. That is the fact. And the fact I'm talking about now is that the same exact strata that we find these prehistoric animals, giant lizards and giant amphibians that scientists want to call dinosaurs, in the same geological strata, we find mammals. Not supposed to happen. We find human arrowheads. We find all kinds of things. So the problem we have is one of filtering and censorship. The data has always been there. We have found fossilized humans. We have found fossilized human femurs that were 18 inches longer than a human femur today. There's so much evidence out there. It's just not publicized. You have to go to the specialist material. You have to read different books that were like Glen Rose, Texas has authors. They go to Glen Rose, Texas, and they document the things that have been found there. Fossilized hammers that were found in 30 million year old strata, but we know the strata's not that old. This is the problem. Uniformitarianism promotes an idea that the world is super ancient, and these are all the reasons why. But they have to ignore fossilized butterfly wings. They have to ignore petrified jellyfish. They have to ignore all these things that show that entire ecosystems in our world were begun instantaneously. It's called the Cambrian explosion, where thousands of life forms, many of which still exist today, suddenly appeared in an instant with no transitional forms. This is a evolutionary mystery called the Cambrian explosion. Then we have the fact that the entire world has been flash frozen. Fossilized jellyfish, dragonfly wings, whole fish have been found petrified in the middle of swallowing a smaller fish. I show all these pictures on my channel. So whole entire biospheres have been edited in just as fast as whole ecosystems have been flash frozen and edited out. This means our entire reality can be compressed into 5, 6, 7, 10,000 years, and that none of these millions of years ever happened.
I've heard the flat earthers say that before, that our world is just about that old. You know, it kind of, in a lot of ways, it makes sense to me, because the drudgery of life for man, I mean, even if Homo sapiens are 200,000 years old, I mean, living in such conditions for thousands and thousands of years must have been just torture. So it kind of makes sense, because if we were here 5,000 to 6,000 years ago, civilization could have just began. It could have started in such a way that people had homes and irrigation and were living in a society where it had rules and laws. So we weren't living like Neanderthals. I have another question about our society, about our civilization, about our planet that I think people want to know, which is about the races. Do you think that the human race was created in an instant? And if so, we are very different from each other. And being that you're saying that the world could be maybe 10,000 years old, we wouldn't have had the time evolution-wise to become different races. So what is your take on that?
There is no evidence from the historical or archaeological record at all that human races slowly developed from more primitive life forms. It almost seems like the exact opposite. Even in the traditions, we have evidence of a technologically advanced infrastructure that had collapsed and then almost rejuvenated before it suffered another reset and collapsed. We have problems with the whole racial deal because the different types of blood types. My dog's about to drive me crazy.
If you need to take a break to handle her, no problem. I can edit it out.
I'm gonna wait. So somebody must be close. Somebody must be close to the property.
Okay.
So anyway, I'll give you an example. We have traditions. We have traditions of worldwide infrastructures and all kinds of societies and timekeeping systems based off the stars and the moon. Before there was ever any evidence of any white or Caucasian type people in this world. As a matter of fact, the appearance of Caucasians in the world seen under the vapor canopy is the subject matter to about 90% of the world's oldest texts, oldest writings. It's the appearance of this new species, these white people, that shocked the entire pre-flood world. And I've gone through this in my Files. My Files is about this and how in modern times this whole Anunnaki scenario, this whole ancient alien scenario has basically created a false presentation of what the historical record actually conveys. And so Zechariah, and we can thank Zechariah Sitchin for a lot of that. Eric von Daniken, those type of researchers embellished a lot. And but no, we have a problem with blood types. We have a problem with racial types. Because if we were to stick with the stories that our predecessors have passed down to us, our predecessors said that there are overseers. You can call them whatever. You can call them custodians. You can call them gods. You can call them demigods, divinities, whatever. But these overseers introduced whole races. This is very clear from the historical record. It is very clear from the writings of Hesiod that different races were introduced at different time periods. It is very clear from the Mayan Popol Vuh Codex that the gods created races out of different materials. Now, I have theorized many times on my own channel that this simulacrum has had us live through different biospheres. Those biospheres activate different gene sequences in humans, allowing us to survive those biospheres and these temperature extremes, these atmospheric pressure extremes. This is what human DNA is. It is a repository that is more ancient than the simulacrum we live in. I have postulated many times on my channel that DNA is ancient and it comes from somewhere else. It wasn't developed here at all. DNA has all the secrets of the universe, the secrets of the simulacrum. It is pure coding, but our DNA, much of it is inactive. It is dormant. It's called latent genes. Then there are entire sequences arranged in palindromes that geneticists merely call junk DNA because they don't know what it does. I know what it does. It has everything to do with your biosphere. Once the vapor canopy returns, a lot of that junk DNA that's designed for vapor canopy conditions will be activated. People will heal open wounds in seconds. They will be able to hold their breath for phenomenally long periods of time. They will be able to do more, see more, hear more, smell more, taste more, touch more. They'll be able to be almost superhuman. And in some people, mainly females, it will activate all kinds of telepathic, empathic, and all. For males, it's the physical. For females, it's more the mental. It's more the emotional. But Yes, there's nothing natural to the development of races on Earth. It's almost as if, and other people have theorized this before I was even born, it's almost as if some races were just deliberately put here in a flash and then left to their own devices, as if somebody is studying how they'll come together and do whatever they're going to do.
So it could have been like a particular race was here, and then maybe a few thousand years later, another race appeared, and then maybe another race, a different part of the planet, they were put there. You know, I read in Slave Species of God by Michael Tellinger and some other books that Enki and Leo, I forgot his name, but these were extraterrestrials who tampered with DNA, kind of mixed it with alien genes to create us, which were kind of supposedly a hybrid. So when you were telling the story, it kind of reminded me of that, even though you didn't say that exactly. And I don't know if that's exactly true, what I just said, but it seems like you said we were tampered with, we were put here. It was in a flash. It wasn't over these long periods of time. But is there a difference between a black person and a white person, Asian persons, besides maybe a little bit, maybe like 0.1% DNA in the way we look, or are we basically all the same physically, in a sense? You know what I mean? Like,
I'm not really so what you're describing to me right now is you're asking me if the differences in the races are basically cosmetic. So
yes.
I just don't think so. I think we're all intelligent. We all have the capacity to be very intelligent. What I believe, and I have said this, even though I have taken a lot of criticism because people get triggered, but I have said this in my Anunophiles, I believe that different races have been implanted with these genetic barriers, these fail-safes, that when they collectively, basically when they get to a certain plateau of civilization in their basically in their government, in their economics, in their philosophy, in their spirituality, in all their echelons of existence, it's almost as if once they all get to that deal, there is something that retards their development almost instantly. If they don't have any contact with another civilized or advanced race, they collapse. Because this has been shown in the historical record many times. Like when a nation invades another nation throughout history, the empire that invaded will normally have a much better infrastructure, good philosophical systems, administrative capacities. Their civilization is heightened, and then the invaded absolutely absorb these principles and vibrate on their frequency, and they're up there. Now they have administration. Now they have technology. Now they have engineering. Now they have aqueducts and they have libraries. They have all these things. But when that civilization retracts and pulls its own blood back out, what happens? This has happened over and over and over and over. The original civilization almost instantly reverts back. Within a century, they're back to where they were before, almost as if they had no contact at all with a more advanced civilization. This has happened so many times that we can no longer accept that as an anomaly. It is the norm. This means that different people by race have programming within them that retards their development when they get to a certain area.
So let me ask you this. When you look out at the sky, you're saying that these could just be projections. I mean, is there a universe out there? You know, can we travel throughout the universe? Or is it just a projection in the sky?
I have a buddy named Stephen Walsworth who will tell you, and I can't argue against him, but he will tell you, because he believes that the Apollo program was real, he will tell you that the Matrix itself will feed you the phenomenon that you believe you're experiencing. So if you build a rocket and you go up, according to his model, you'll go to the moon. You'll do all these things. It will completely feed you this whole experience. Now, he and I love that dude. I've been knowing him long since I've been out. I met him. He used to be all over my original website called Nephilim Archives before I ever created Archaics. When I first got out of prison, Nephilim Archives is where I put all my research. it didn't take long for Stephen and I to realize that my research was going to go far beyond the biblical. So I changed it to archaics. But Stephen will tell you this. This is his position. I totally disagree with him, but it doesn't affect neither one of us. We have disagreements in other areas too. But he's still a really good friend of mine. I don't believe that. I just don't believe the Apollo, they never went to the moon. I don't believe the moon's a physical object. If it is, it's a hologram that hides something else. So I believe it's a control mechanism. I believe it's a true observatory. And this is where the origin of the Watchers come from. The Igigi that had come to our world, they didn't come from another planet. They didn't come from another system. None of that. The Igigi came from the moon. So my take on that's a little different. So as far as a cosmos goes, I am of the opinion that there is no reason for a simulacrum if it's not an actual simile of a very real place. If this was created to run experiments that do not cross-contaminate the real universe, that necessarily implies there's a real universe. What that real universe could be like, we must have some type of similarity, or the experiments that are conducted within this confinement, this closed system, wouldn't make sense. How can you trust the output if the medium that you're using is not an exact replica of the world you live in? You follow me?
I do.
It doesn't. To have a simulated world implies the real world must be an exact copy, or your output will be corrupt. So I believe that even though the stellosphere is lying to us, and it's just a hologram that makes us believe in a heliocentric model, I believe there's a real universe out there. And in that real universe, there are luminaries that we call stars. There are planets. There are worlds. There are asteroids. All that's real. The problem is the cracks in the holosphere began showing up in the last 200 years or so people are waking up that what they're seeing is artificial. That's why you have this huge flat earth movement that produces all this data that is incontrovertible. They're right. I tell my flat earth brothers all the time, buddy, you're right, but I can't agree with you. We don't live on a flat earth. And they don't get it. They just don't get it. In a simulated context, it's a flat plane. The overlay is a stellosphere, which is domed. It's all a hologram. This also implies that we're only experiencing 50% of the known world. The other 50% of the known world is much more real estate. It's underground. Because in underground, you can build civilizations in 3 dimensions. You can only build civilizations on the surface in 2 dimensions. You can only go in 2 different directions on the surface world. It's flat. It's a plane. Cities on top of cities on the surface. But you can in the underworld. In the underworld, you can build cities pancaked on top of cities that are so far down and deep, some of those civilizations down there wouldn't even know that there's a surface world. They have no contact with it. They wouldn't even have any. It's just the real estate underneath us is far more vast than what we have on this thin skin that we call our ecosphere. Because even on this thin skin, I mean, the highest mountain to the lowest part of the Marianas Trench is only 12 miles, but we don't exist in that area because we can't breathe at the highest at either point. We can't breathe at a real high elevation, and we can't breathe underwater. So the habitable zone for humans on the surface is a thin skin. The civilizations that are in the underworld could be 300 times more vast, and we wouldn't know. We wouldn't. We're way up here. We just wouldn't know. So my take is different. My take is very different about the flat earth deal. I think their conclusions are absolutely correct. But in being correct, they have completely boxed themselves in. Just because you realize that the sky is a lie and that you realize that you're not on an actual globe doesn't mean that you have a complete cosmology. You don't. Now you're boxed in. Well, you live on an infinite flat plane that's got multiple domes. You can't produce a single fact of evidence that shows there's another dome outside this one. So we have problems with the flat Earth model. I believe it's a stepping stone. It's not a destination. So in simulation theory, we can take all the flat earth material and incorporate it into our paradigm. We can accept it. But at the same time, we can accept that this is a simulation, which implies it's a copy, which implies that there is a real system out there somewhere. So that's the best way I can explain that.
I'm with you on it. I know it is difficult to explain this to a layperson or anybody. I think you did the best you can. I think some of the viewers are going to be a little confused on that, but I think you and I have an understanding on it. Some of the people that have studied it like us will understand as well. Which brings me to, I wanted to ask you some of the viewer questions because they had a lot of great questions, and I didn't really put them in any particular order. But I just figured I'd go ahead and ask you, and you can just answer them in as short or long as you want.
Ask away.
All right. Kat, these are all my viewers, by the way. Kat says, why the 2030 agenda and the reason they are spreading so much fear, propaganda, and devastation upon the world? I guess she's talking about the government, the elite. Why are they? I mean, there's a lot of videos coming out. There's a lot of information about this 2030 Great Reset. People are in fear that it's going to really change society. And I know that you don't see it that way. But what is your answer to this question?
In order to steal a lot of wealth from the people, during the Battle of Waterloo, the Rothschilds put out misinformation to London, to the London marketplace. They put out this great fear factor. It was all intentional. The Rothschilds had agents already set up to buy everything that was about to come up for sale. Nothing was for sale yet. Companies were owned by private individuals. Companies were owned by the nobility, and all of it was running finely. But in England, during the days of Napoleon, at the Battle of Waterloo was going to be decisive, because after Waterloo, Napoleon was going to come to England. So they set up a system of signals. Rothschild basically had ships put into position that would throw out a false signal to get the people of London to look out over the water and believe that Napoleon had won. Because that would instantly have set a panic off in the stock markets of London, and everybody would have been selling off their wealth, selling off their companies, selling everything off. People wanted to get out and maybe go to the Americas, the colonies or something, because they're going to run from Napoleon. And the system worked. Napoleon did not win the battle, but the false signal was sent out. The fear was sent out. Everybody acted on that fear. When they acted on that fear, the agents of the Rothschilds were in position. They bought everything. London has been owned by the Rothschilds ever since. Now, it's called the city today. Most people don't know the history of London. The British people no longer own their own city. It's London. It's like Vatican. It's like Washington, D.C. So the reason I'm giving that anecdote out is because that is exactly what the media does today. I know this. I haven't experienced any of these fear factors that have been put out. I remember Y2K fondly. I remember the great fear factor of Y2K. I remember the great how Operation whatever it was in 2003 when Bush invaded Iraq, how it was going to ripple over as to start World War III, and all this terrible stuff is going to happen. I remember the media discussing all that. I remember the media discussing all these horrific things that were going to domino out after 2001, 9/11. So the media is steadily perpetuating every single year a new strain of a new thing, and they're trying to get your vibration lower and lower and lower. So in order to better control a population, you lower their vibration. They're much easily controlled through fear. And this is what the media does. All these things that the media is putting out today, that's what it's doing. It's getting you to fear. But I don't see events going in the same direction as the fear indicates. I see something totally different, which I'm always explaining on my channel.
I agree with you. Not Hippo. Of course, a lot of interesting screen names. So right. Not Hippo says, I do believe we're in a simulation. Why on earth would the simulator creators make this realm with basically endless pain for pretty much everything in it? That's why I can't believe in any good, loving God. I used to be a Christian. The pain and suffering is enormous in capitals. I can't get over this to reconcile this reality. So, Jason, why would the simulation be created with so much pain and so many problems here?
Okay, well, the question implies a false premise. I do not agree that the simulacrum was initially designed to be this way. And I addressed this on my channel many times. The original simulacrum is a mathematical construct that mimics a reality so we can build and invent new things that will never cross-contaminate the real reality. It was a safe haven for science and experiences, a place to grow and all that. But something happened. Something was introduced into the simulacrum, a new protocol that took on its own power. It assumed its own, basically, personality, and this was not a part of the original design. I have theorized over and over on my own channel that there must be, outside of this construct, two opposing philosophical, basically, fronts. The architects of the simulacrum was opposed by somebody with a different philosophy on how things are supposed to be run inside the simulacrum. And this controversy is echoed in the most ancient traditions. It is echoed in the God Lucifer situation. It is echoed where an original perfect creation was made. But then somebody got up and opposed that and said, look, this is too perfect. I can do one that's going to actually provide value, because if you make it too perfect, how's anybody going to grow? How's anybody going to develop? It's too an endless golden age will only produce artificiality. So this philosophical conflict resulted in the introduction of artificial intelligence X. AI X is the personality that we find in all the ancient records that has assumed the role of a god. He is the Demiurge. He is Yaldabaoth. He is Ahriman. He is Satan. He is Lucifer. He is the serpent. He is the shadow in the matrix. This protocol or personality is the reason why all the negativity exists. But it only exists in the temporal, because my position is that the guy that asked that question, Hippo, that you, everybody listening to my voice, were actually immortals suffering a temporary experience. That temporary experience, because we are jacked into something that is so technologically advanced, it interfaces between the psyche and the soul, and we call it the central nervous system. It is the only thing. It looks like a worm, a parasite. That parasite is what actually bridges the spirit to this material simulated holography. That bridge makes us believe all this is physical and real when it's not, because the central nervous system is a filtering system that makes you believe these things are physical when they're not. We're all ghost projections. The pain, the suffering, it's all illusory. Yes, you experience it and feel it. But when the simulacrum collapses, all the negativity collapses with it. What is left is the immortal being who just lived through 138 or 155, however many life sims. Everything you learned, everything that you accepted into your informed field is now a part of your new armor, your new weapon. So this whole experience of living all these different lives, yes, you went through the dark, but you obtained the light. This is my position of the why that we're going through all this.
Speaking of the real world, so you believe that there's a real world, and we are hooked into these, for lack of a better term, like a VR headset. You said that one time.
Yes.
And it makes us feel that we're actually living in this simulacrum, like this simulacrum, I should say, it makes us feel this simulacrum is completely real.
Yes.
We're fully immersed 24/7, and we completely have forgotten about our true self in the real world.
Yes, and you have to understand, we're already replicating a more primitive type of technology that does just this. We're already on board. We're already doing this to a minimalist degree. Some of these interactive worldwide video games have thousands, sometimes 10,000s of players all in the program at the same time, all in the same cityscape or kingdom or world. And these are real personalities behind these cartoon avatars that are traveling through here. But there's 100,000 avatars in there. They're NPCs. They're not real. But in the game, you don't know who's real and who's not. Some of them belong to the game. Some of them are actually real people playing the game with you. This is a primitive version in our entertainment industry today of the technology that I'm talking about. The technology I'm talking about is so sophisticated that 500 or 600 people can all be jacked into one and actually made to believe by the filters in the central nervous system and all the data that's uploaded into their minds through it that they're experiencing a world that has 7 billion people. It's too easy if it's technology. And if it's technology, it answers for every enigma and anomaly of the ancient and modern world. There is no longer any mystery to Mandela effect. There's no longer anything mysterious about coincidence and synchronicity. Deja vu becomes understandable. All the edits and resets and cataclysm protocols from the history of the world all make perfect sense. The reason there are seemingly contradictions in some of the things that we find in history is because it's a program. And a lot of times when you overlay holographic templates over each other, there's going to be data fossils embedded in the program that haven't been necessarily removed. We see this all the time. One of them is the duck-billed platypus. It is absolutely anomalous. It doesn't belong in this world. You cannot, by evolutionary means, ever put together a mammal that lays eggs. It's crazy. The duck-billed platypus has so many, it's almost a clue to our existence. It's almost as if the duck-billed platypus was sent here, put in here, and programmed here for the intelligent observer to study it and realize reality is a joke. Somebody's playing with us. And it's not the only one. There are many anomalies that do not make sense if you believe the world is as the establishment wants you to believe it. But once you start regarding our reality as having all the common denominators of a sophisticated video game, everything starts making sense to you. And you develop an internal freedom that frees you from all the media fear. And once you're freed from all that fear program every day, you vibrate on a higher frequency every morning when you get up. And when you're vibrating on that higher frequency every morning you get up, you start seeing the artificiality of everything around you. And you even become a builder of your own daily experiences. These are the transformative phases that I've lived in my life in just 6 years of being out of prison. I have built and scripted in experiences for me out of just pure wanting it to happen, believing it will happen, and just forgetting about it and going about my daily business. Vibrating higher and higher and higher has brought circumstances, has brought situations, has brought people, has brought finances. Everything just flows. And anybody can do it, but you got to break free of the media programming. The media is the number one tool in the world to get you to vibrate on a frequency that it can control.
What you said about the video game is a great, great analogy, because as you were saying that, I was thinking of the game No Man's Sky, and it was like spot on. I think that'll really help people understand what you're saying. As far as you saying that deja vu, Mandela effects, which are now seen to be maybe unexplainable, become explained because this is a simulation. I was thinking about Tom Campbell, who basically says the same thing, just in a different way and coming from a different viewpoint, where he says, once we understand this is a simulation, the supernatural becomes natural. And
I agree.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you this. Why is it that we as real people in the real world would decide to put on this VR headset and come into this simulacrum fully knowing that there's an AIX here and how difficult it can be. And I wanted to ask you this: why is it that we as real people in the real world would decide to put on this VR headset and come into this simulacrum fully knowing that there's an AIX here and how difficult it can be?